This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 96.
Yes.
Moving up.
Moving up. I mean, yeah, 4 away from 100.
The ridiculous thing is I don't see an end in sight.
Right. Keeps going.
Well, you know, it's one of the few platforms we have at this point. So,
Correct.
I'm going to begin with a quote. You don't have to guess who it is because I'll tell you in a minute. But,
Okay.
Quote,
Yep.
When in our democratic republic, forces of conspiracy, division, and despotism arise, it is the patriotic duty of citizens to act collectively in defense of liberty and justice. Now, this is the statement that's just come out, signed by over 100, believe it or not, Republicans who are sick to death of the stupidity of Trumpism. Let me quote again. This is the first step. Former Homeland Security official Miles Taylor, he helped organize the effort, and he's known for being, well, one of the anonymous who sounded the alarm about Trump from a national security perspective while he was still serving in the government. So I think that's a pretty good sign when 100 prominent Republicans, they didn't list their names yet, think that this has just gone too frickin' far.
Well, they're going to do that. The latest polls are, so amongst registered Republicans, 44% say they'll be loyal to Trump no matter what, way above the Republican Party. But 50% of Republicans say they're more loyal to the Republican Party over Trump. So it's a little gamble, but they're basically Liz Cheney's driven out today, who basically said she's going to do everything in her power. You know, the Cheneys have a lot of power, actually.
We know a few of the things that her dad has done.
You know, but they're kind of responsible for Trump. I mean, a lot of these people voted for both Bush, Cheney, and Trump. So, you know, if you're poor white trash, if I may say so, and then you were sent off to Iraq because you were brainwashed by, and then your kid has like fucking no limbs. You're like, hey, we got screwed. Yeah, now I'm gonna vote for Trump because he's against the system. And after a certain point, it's like, I don't know. I mean, you guys voted for all these fucking people. And
all right, now I just have to cut in and say, not all poor people are white trash, and not all poor
that's
people
not what I said.
Voted for. I'm clarifying,
Okay.
and not all poor people voted for Trump, but there is a mass amount of purposeful ignorance in this country, and that's just the way it is.
Well, it's the whole thing's tragic. We'll see what happens. We'll see who the people. Hey, maybe Trump will be the voice, the person that brings down the Republican Party in the modern version.
Done a great job so far. Anyway, well, the Colonial Pipeline, which sounds like a high colonic, if you ask me. The Colonial Pipeline is back up and running, and they have no plans to pay the rumored and wanted $5 million ransom to Darkside, who took responsibility for shutting down the pipeline, which is now causing gas shortages from Texas to New Jersey. This is one of the problems, though, in this country. I mean, when one company that's that big and they supply 45% of all of the East Coast fuel, including to the Atlanta airport, 90 U.S. military installations, 26 oil refineries, how many gas stations? But let me tell you a little bit about Darkside, because I've been investigating these.
Yes, please.
Well, they're a group of hackers who first emerged with their own press release in August of 2020, and they've become known for their...
Whoa!
I think that's them right now.
That was a dark side fart, I think.
Since their press release, they've become known for their professional operations and demand for large ransoms. They even have a phone number and a help desk. Phone number and help desk to facilitate negotiations with the victims. Now, they're probably based in Russia, but they've also hacked about a dozen other companies, including Enterprise, Car Rental, and an Office Depot. But they have publicly stated that they prefer not to attack hospitals, schools, nonprofits, and governments, but rather big organizations that can afford to pay the ransom. Quote, before any attack, we carefully analyze our accountancy and determine how much you can pay based on your net income. That's their press release. They got gumption. And then, of course, we have that master of moderation, Newt Gingrich, chiming in saying, well, I think that we should just kill anybody overseas who's been found to be part of these attacks on the American infrastructure. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Well, it's also, as we saw with that big deep freeze that Texas had this winter, just the privatization of our infrastructure and the privatization of everything. It's hard to have a unified security against such things. And especially as we're heading into cyber attacks, the control, the engineering of all this stuff, it's just going to be hard to have a consistent reaction to things like cyber attacks.
And the thing is, they have these huge fusion centers. And I'm going to refer back to a few years ago. The Washington Post had a great 12-part series called Surveillance Society about these fusion centers bigger than the Pentagon scattered across the country, which gather all the internet information, but yet can't stop something like this from DarkSide, who's advertising, giving their phone number and a help desk, and has done this numerous times before. What are these people doing?
Well, they're not being shut down by Russia for a reason. So even if they're not being directly supported by Russia, when these type of cyber attacks happen, you have China, Russia, who reverse engineer our reactions. So it's basically like a little stress test of what our on our infrastructure, and then they can see how we react and what our defense tactics are. In case they wanted to do like a major one, just like shut down the whole country.
Other than having to pay off DarkSide or line them up and shoot them, but you can't find them, we haven't really come to very many solutions. And it just goes to show, too, with all of the internet lip flapping before January 6th insurrection, still, what the hell are they focusing on? Anyway, give me a piece of some good news.
Well, I don't know if any of this is good. It's kind of objectively present this stuff. I don't know if you
I'll take it, Tim.
Good or bad.
I'll take it.
Lisa Ormond from Decatur, Georgia. I think it's where my brother lives. She's lived in this house for 14 years. And for the fourth time, an arena-size infestation of bees have come to her house. And so she's like, uh-oh, here we go again, because it keeps on happening. Fourth time in 14 years. And she starts seeing all these like swarms flying out of one area. And then, of course, she calls the exterminator. She had 100,000 bees infest her house. Just it seemed like in a matter of days. And they just don't know why. She's done all this bee proofing and they just keep on going back there. So I know bees communicate like, hey, they twitch and they do all this little sign language about like there's a good batch of flowers over here, whatever they're talking about. But they give each other instructions and they communicate. I think something like 30 different plus instructions have been identified by scientists. Something really insane. But anyhow, they keep on going back to her. I don't know what's.
Why is she trying to fight him? We need all the bees we can get. She should just give them their own hives and maybe live in the guest house for a while.
Well, maybe she's not so sweet. Ha ha ha. All right. That's pretty bad. Do you want to talk about this really weird roaming tiger thing that's going on out in this Houston suburbs right now?
There's nothing I love more than a roaming tiger. I told you there was one in my neighborhood about 6 months ago. Where do these guys come from? I mean, the zoo near my house doesn't even have tigers, I don't think.
Well, this was, so the city of Houston doesn't allow residents to have wild animals, but of course, Harris County and a lot of these kind of like libertarian counties outside of Houston totally allow you to have basically anything. The thing fucking comes out of a house and the whole thing's chaos. And then you have some fucking cowboy off-duty cop, quote unquote, going, get the fuck back inside. Fuck you and your fucking tiger. And he's out there. There's video of all this waving his gun. Meanwhile, some guy who turns out to be Victor Cuervez or something, 26, comes out, grabs the tiger by a collar, brings it back inside. Cops are called. Turns out it's not even Victor's tiger. He's just some nutcase that's like, I'll take care of this, and grabs a tiger by the collar.
Wait. He's a tiger wrangler?
Well, he's also out on bond for murder right now. So when they got him, like, oh, you're on bond. And then now they're looking for the tiger owner. I think the tiger's escaped again. It's just,
Well, you know what's coming next.
It's a mess.
You know what always comes in the summer, which I like out of LA. And I have to say, sometimes I watch the Los Angeles news. We never show car chases here. I don't know why, but also we don't show black bears in the backyard on trampolines or going in the swimming pool, which is every summer. LA and some newspaper has that. Now, let's go back to the tigers for a minute. 40 to 60 pounds probably of meat a day.
Oh,
who can afford that?
I went to the Bronx Zoo once. It was feeding time for the Bengal tigers, and these fucking things are so fucking big up close. And they have this insane kind of thick glass, and there's this little, sort of like when you go to the gas station and maybe a rougher part of town at night, they just have like a little envelope,
a bulletproof glass.
Yeah, but they have that little shelf thing that you do your exchange. So the tiger feeders,
the figers,
the figers are just wedging in tons of ground meat in this thing, and they just wolf down tons of ground meat.
Well, I mean, look, we saw the exploitation. Some would say the reservation of tigers with that hilariously awful documentary Tiger King. Yes. And that we do know that in this country there are people that trade in tigers. I mean, let's preserve the tiger, but I'm not so sure in a suburb in Houston is the place to do that.
No, it's just some weird vanity. It's not, these exotic animal collectors. I don't know what it is. How about this? They're nuts. I mean, I think there's a level of crazy involved. These animals have not been domesticated. I mean, tens of thousands of years. Maybe how long have dogs have been domesticated? I don't even know. It's something really long. Tigers have never been domesticated, so don't try it.
And they shouldn't. They shouldn't. All right. Well.
Yes.
I have to talk about this. Yes. The ass clown of the week. And that's, I've never heard of her before. I looked her up and she hasn't been in any films, but she claims she's an ex-actress since the early 90s. I think she was in the Doors film. Former actress and current QAnon conspiracy theorist Kirsten Weldon claims that Hillary Clinton died last year of Kuru, a rare brain-wasting disease associated with cannibalism. Now, she also claims that Angela Merkel has stage 3 Kuru, and that George Soros is often mentioned in right-wing conspiracy theories because of his donations to the Democratic Party. That he passed away.
He's Jewish.
Oh, he passed away years ago, and if you see him out there, it's probably a clone. She's also bragged about knowing the location of every NASA office and said that she would be delivering speeches at each and every one of the space agency's offices once Trump comes back to the White House. I think we got a nutcase on our hand.
Oh, I wonder. Well, I'm glad she informed everyone. So she must be happy now that Hillary Clinton's dead. I thought they all hate her so much. So I guess she is. I guess it's a good thing.
It must have been that pizza with all the baby cheeks on it that she ordered that was part of Pizzagate. I'm coming next. I sent you that story. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, Tim, as we do share ridiculous tales now and then about that sea creature with one mouth and 100 anuses. It's kind of like the Republican Party.
Well, it's kind of like when you're making pasta, it's like there's one big hole to put the dough in, and then all of a sudden, many holes for it to come out. So maybe there's a lot of designs there. I have to look more into it. So here's some more ridiculous news. A Basquiat painting.
I am just about to frickin' puke. Tell me.
It's not even his own record. It came in second of his own record in terms of a piece that sold for the most. But Christie's, they haven't announced who, at least I don't think they've announced who bought it. $93.1 million painting called In the Case, but still hasn't beaten the 2017 record, Sotheby's, where they sold one of his paintings for $110.5 million to internet billionaire Japanese business guy Yusaku Mazawa.
You suck, whoever pays that kind of money. Look, let's just break this down for a minute. I don't care how many years you've been dead for. You know my feelings about the value of any art, that there is a value on it, and there should be. But when someone is dead, it's almost like insider trading to the worst kind of people.
Oh.
How many artists could actually be supported for $100 million instead of putting the money on the grave of a dead painter? You know how much that pisses me off.
Yes, and where this is going is, in the past 3 years, it's all these records are being broken. It's really just a crazy, I don't know, people are just so wealthy now, and it's a way to move their resources around, their assets around. It's just another rich man's game.
It's the vulgarity of wealth. And I think the biggest irritant to me is, of course, it's not frickin' democratic, but just the imbalance of what that money could actually do for a country, for a city, for a community, for 100 artists, 1,000 artists. It just really pisses me off.
So Basquiat went to high school at Edward R. Murrow, which is just down the street from here in Midwood. But he grew up East Flatbush. Why don't you give the community in East Flatbush $110 million?
Thank you. He's buried not far from me. Maybe I'll go take a picture of myself on his grave doing something, burning $100 bill, and then turn it into an NFT.
Well, yeah, and his gravestone's very modest. At Greenwood Cemetery, you have some pretty grandiose stones there, but his is just like one of those little guys kind of pinned in the grass, not even sticking up. Not that it matters. I don't care about that.
You know what? Just wrap this up, and that way we can get on to a living artist who's on episode number 96, a youngster who wears many hats. We'll get to him in a minute. That would be Owen Kline. And in the meantime, let's wrap this up, tie it up.
All right,
Hit me with something joyful.
Well, I got a couple things, but hopefully this. So earlier this year, Douglas Scott, 82-year-old Douglas Scott of Casco, Maine, dies. And they're like, okay, old man Scott's dead. So the family, the kids and stuff, they go and they've been kind of cleaning out his house, and they ran into a bunch of human remains, and they're like, huh? And that's all being investigated. They called the authorities. They're not really giving too much information, but Grandpa had literally had skeletons in the closet.
Where was the Midwest somewhere?
No, Casco, Maine, which is about 40 miles north of Portland. Some Stephen King kind of shit going on. I'll wrap it up with this one. So Romania is having a really hard time convincing its citizens to get the vaccine. So they came up with a clever way by giving them out at Dracula's castle in Transylvania, and where Vlad the Impaler lived.
There's only going to be tourists that go there, but
that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to kick in tourism. They're like, why don't we have to get tourism back. We got to convince our citizens to get it, or maybe other EU citizens who are allowed into Romania, because you can go into Romania, basically anyone right now, and they're just offering like, you come here, you get your shot. We'll see if it works.
I'm shot by both sides, to quote a magazine song.
Oh, whoa.
There were Mother's Day weekend 2021, 11 mass shootings, 17 people dead, 35 wounded. But that's nothing really, because so far this year, and it's only May, middle of May, 194 mass shootings. And that makes about an average of 10 a week. So bring back the firing squad. It's already here. That's what Trump wants. Newt Gingrich, kill them all, especially if they're foreign. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. It's out of control. It's beyond comprehension.
And I think this summer, my prediction this summer, especially with cops, I think they're going to pull the whole, you need us. See what happens in these cities when you don't have us. I think the cops are going to have a light touch on society, and society's going to find its limits, particularly the youth. I think it's going to be a very, I feel like there's these ominous things signs going, the mass shootings, everything to do with the cop culture. I just think it's going to be a bloody one this year.
There is an uncivil war going on in this country, and it's been coming for quite a while. And the thing is, because we have access to information, we know more about what's going down. But that doesn't mean anybody yet has found a solution, because half of the country is stymied by people backed by the now bankrupt, supposedly, National Rifle Association. And at this point, with there being twice as many guns as adults in this country, I don't know what the solution is. I really don't.
Yep. Gun sales are through the roof. So we'll see how that pans out.
All right. Episode 96. Here we go again. The Lydia and Spin, Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and our special guest, Owen Kline, who, for such a young rapscallion, seems to know an awful lot about an awful lot of things. Very impressive. Here we go. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Owen Kline, former actor, now directing, and also, I guess, talking to a bunch of other people just like we are here with his radio show. Hi, welcome, Owen Kline.
Hello.
Tim, back up for people that have no idea about this bizarro cult coven of weirdo guys you're talking about, because how the hell, Owen, did you get invited over to meet Dave Budden? That would be Dr. Dave Earl Budden, one of the most unsung bizarro composers that used to room with Tim and Simon at one. How did you even get involved with these freaks?
I mean, first of all, I don't think these are the people that you gravitate to as the wild figures in New York. So, you know, I don't know how I got mixed up with Tim, but I know how I got mixed up with David Earl Budden.
And
can
you extrapolate?
It's all through this character, BJ Rubin, who's the reason why we're talking.
Tim, did BJ Rubin just have like a cable show or something?
Yes, exactly. He had a cable access show, and BJ met David Budden through me, who I met back at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and then kind of brought him into my apartment. South Carolina composer. I don't know how you describe this guy. We'd like to have him on at some point if he can figure out how to not fuck that up. But that's a different point.
But hang on a second. But Owen, what attracted you? Was it the cable show? Was it the bizarro music?
Well, BJ was a friend of mine. I guess I was in the DI, I like to call it DIY, pretend that,
I call it DIM, do it myself, instead of
do it myself, everyone fuck off, whatever you call that. But yeah, I mean, I guess I met these guys at like Silent Barn shows and Death by Audio shows that friends of mine were on bills with. And, I feel like everything that your guys' generation built in a weird way, we sort of kept up. One of those things being that it was like teenagers kind of fused with old people and everybody in the middle at these things. You know what I mean? Because you find yourself smoking dope with our Stevie Moore or something. Or I don't know. That did never happen, but that's the kind of horrible scenario that you might find yourself in with David Earl Budden.
I'm going to put this in an ageist context. I've been performing for as long as Tim Dahl has been alive, almost. And also
that makes me feel better.
Owen, that means that you're almost too old actually to be a future ex-lover of mine. I know it's ridiculous, and I'm just putting it out there.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Okay, wait. So, Owen, you were on the cable access show because BJ was a friend of yours.
We all were.
I know. I'm talking to him, Tim. So, were you on that show because he was a friend of yours, or because of your youngster acting things?
He was just a friend of mine, and he would have anyone on if you wrote a bit or did some insane thing. It was just sort of like he tried to keep it hairy.
But he was dating your sister's best friend. That's basically where.
Oh no! Well, she was really my best friend.
Oh, Lauren was your best friend.
She came from my school, and she, we met in like a computer class in 7th grade, and we're trading Brian Eno tapes and stuff. That's how we met.
The beauty about having grown up in New York. I mean, look, I came here when I was 16, 17, but you actually grew up here. I think so many people that I talk to that did grow up here and that are your age, I hear people saying, "Oh, I got into no wave at 10," and I'm like, "What?"
I
But
didn't get into no wave at 10. That's the generation below,
right? But you're talking
see it as
about
both.
Brian Eno in the 7th grade.
I feel like that's age old. It's just someone's got an older brother that knows what it is and all that stuff, and then you tape it. And
Let's talk about your 7th grade habits.
7th grade, the Pixies
Whatever.
reunited when I was in 7th grade or 8th grade or something. That was like the big deal when I was there. I remember probably my first adult magazine I ever bought, GQ, was like a Frank Black cover for this thing.
Well, that's so bizarre because GQ literally today just contacted me for no other reason other than I covered a Blue Oyster Cult song. And just a few days ago, we interviewed Dennis Dunaway, who wrote all of the best Alice Cooper songs, who's playing with Blue Oyster Cult. I also covered Black Juju. You see, this is why we call it the connective tissue with the Lydian spin. It's all very somehow strangely, psychically, ethereally connected somehow.
Okay, well, here's one. Yeah, 2 days ago, I had Miriam Lina on my show. I don't know if I told you this, but she's an old friend of mine. I used to work at Norton from high school to college practically, and she's somebody that we're working on. I'm helping. I have a couple pieces in this new Kicks, some research pieces.
Let's just talk about Miriam Lina for a minute because I met Miriam Lina, I guess, 77. She came from Cleveland. She was a good friend with Bradley Field, who was the original drummer for Teenage Jesus. The Cramps before that had asked me to be their drummer because I had red hair. I said, I'm starting my own band. Ask Miriam Lina. She's got red hair. So, and again, this is just so bizarre. So what were you researching for with Miriam Lina, who's an amazing archivist of music?
Well, I mean, I can't. It's top secret stuff right now because it's Miriam Lina. You know how they are at the Norton Empire.
Well, I don't really, but because who could unless something's coming out? So we'll just leave it that it's a secret. But you're helping her with your.
But yeah, I can say that it's a very cool. I interviewed somebody very cool about their sort of brill building era days and sort of being a teenager coming from the Bronx. It's someone very cool. We're working on the piece, but.
You can't reveal too much, but if she's a great archivist, I mean, you're kind of an archivist too. I mean, so you're in 7th grade, you're into the Pixies, but pretty quickly you clearly want to dive a little deeper and finding stuff more in the guts of just music culture, literature, film, blah, 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 because, just hanging out with you a few times and just seeing your collection of stuff, you definitely go way beyond pop culture, and you did probably fairly quickly. At what point did you just say, you know what, I kind of like some of this pop rock, but it's not enough for me. I want to just keep on going deeper.
It was probably really just seeing stuff in New York and sort of being exposed to it through anthology. After I was in one movie when I was a kid, it was the Squid and the Whale. After I did that movie, the next summer, it was like I was too old for camp, and I was completely fixated on the idea of working at Anthology Film Archives. It was my favorite.
Okay, wait, hey, okay, let's go over that. Let's get a little bit deeper into that. How old were you in that film, and how did you even get in? You have famous parents? Did they help you get into that film? Did you want to act?
I never really wanted to act or anything, but I guess Noah Baumbach was dating a good friend of my mom's.
Okay.
So. And he just had it in his head.
You were going to be the one
that I would play this character. Yeah.
How old were you then?
I was maybe 12 and then 13 by the time we shot it.
I never saw that fucking movie. Do you like the movie?
Yeah, I like the movie. Yeah, okay. I do. I never. In hindsight, I do. Okay. Yeah. To me, it's beyond that. Like because it was so big for me to do it, just because it was so small. The world that my parents, like a giant set that never felt like anything accessible. You know what I mean? To me, and I visited a couple of things, but it just seemed like a towering thing. It didn't seem like
right.
I didn't think that was filmmaking. But then going and doing a small intimate movie in Park Slope in 2004 or whatever, and that we're like. Jeff Daniels is showing up and growing out his beard to play this guy's dad and wear his put his dad's jacket on him. And I could see how he was like weaving fiction with nonfiction and how simple and cheap it could be. And, and the movies that you were a part of, Lydia, were the same thing. And it was like going to Kim's and renting those movies.
Yeah,
and the current stuff. And
how old?
Zed movies.
How old were you at that point? May I ask? Doesn't matter.
Well, I had some pushers behind the counters of these places.
You had some pushers behind the counter.
Sicko pervert pushers that would slip this stuff in a paper bag, put the tape in the clamshell tape in the bag, and send it off to the.
Well, that's how those movies should be presented to a young man, no doubt. You know what? What's interesting?
They had warnings. Yours has warning at the beginning, if I remember correctly.
As it should. And by the way, I mean, I don't know
what I was getting into.
Oh yeah.
Well, we'll see how deep you're getting into that, my friend. What's interesting about those films is, look, first of all, New York at that period, I mean, first of all, with Richard Kern, because I met him after I came back from London, and asked Carlo McCormick, one of the greatest art critics of any time, and especially ours, if there was anybody that did short, violent performances, because I wanted to start curating spoken word. And he introduced me to Richard Kern, who had been making these films like Goodbye 42nd Street with one of my favorite artists, also David Warner Rowitz. And, I had told Kern about this idea that I wanted to make like an homage to Polanski's Repulsion. And so we did Right Side of My Brain. And then we wanted to make a drive-in, fat-free exploitation film. And I have to say that Fingered, not only did it cause, as I like to say, controversy, because it was either the most misogynist film or most feminist film. But then years later, when the Whitney Museum put it as its top of cinema of transgression, it was kind of like everybody has a different version of what those things represent to them. And I'm really glad I did that, because let's face it, they're pretty fucking hardcore.
Yeah, they're really cool. I mean, it's just, to me, and for, having the sort of anthology lens to look through or whatever at that age and seeing it seemed like that was the personal cinema. You know what I mean? It made, I didn't even see it as cinema of transgression or something. It's just like, it's a pure expression or something.
What other films are like on your top 10 list? Because, I mean, I want to talk to you about music and films, but what other films are, knowing that you came out of being a student at the Anthology Film Archives, name me a few of your absolute top films.
Oh, it depends. I mean, of that kind of stuff.
No, anything.
Not enough don't put too much weight on it. Just rattle off some.
So movies. I mean, the movie I've been thinking about the most recently is this movie, Lonely or the Brave, with Kirk Douglas. But that's a strange movie. I mean,
never saw it.
All this stuff. It's too hard. It's too hard to sort of. I never know what to say for that question.
What if I name a few films and you tell me if you saw them or not? And if you haven't, maybe you'll want to.
I'll go look them up. All right. I'll go to the video store.
How about Singapore Sling?
I don't know that movie.
It's a really bizarre black and white film by a Greek director. It's kind of a cross between Sunset Boulevard, Grey Gardens, and incestual kind of erotic film, Mother
Sounds
and Daughter. It's really beautiful. And the bizarre thing is it's up on YouTube now in the full thing. How about The Balcony, based on the play by Jean Genet with Shelley Winters, Leonard Nimoy, and Peter Falk, both of them kind of cool.
I have a very specific memory of watching that in a video store I worked at and loving it. I don't remember much about it.
But it's amazing.
Peter Falk, I remember stealing the show a little bit.
Right, because it takes place in a brothel during a revolution, although we don't know which one. And all the Johns that come in are playing like the Pope and the president, the king, and they have to, after the revolution, go out, and the Johns have to actually play the characters they were in the bordello starring the amazing Shelley Winters. I mean, early Polanski.
I love that kind of stuff. And did you see that when you were a teenager, or when did that come out?
I did. I mean, I saw, and I don't even know how, but what's interesting, I lived in Barcelona for 8 years, and I saw a lot of films I'd never seen in America at 6 a.m. on Turner Classics, like Who's That Knocking? Harvey Keitel early film. Like,
that's a great movie, yeah.
Right? Hi, Mom.
That's one of my, yeah, sure. I love
okay.
Well, that movie I've seen every time it's ever run.
What about,
in my, wherever, yeah.
Coming Apart, Rip Torn.
I love Coming Apart. I saw it at BAM a couple years ago, and I have the video.
What do you think? What do you think of Rip Taylor? What do you think of Rip Taylor?
All right, Tim.
Taylor should have done more films. Yeah.
Oh, and we have a lot of film interest in common. I'm very interested, and we're going to go more into that later.
I have a question though. So with your curiosity and with the access to basically fulfilling your curiosities, were there any Well, it doesn't have to be films. It could be music. It could be anything that you kind of peeked into at a very young age. And you're kind of like, maybe I was a little young for that one. Like, I know for me, seeing like R. Crumb at age 6 and my dad had this stuff, I'm just like, huh? Like incestuous psychedelic, or even Clockwork Orange at age 9 for me was like, it was, that rape scene was pretty heavy. Cheech and Chong when I was 6 was kind of weird. I was like, nice dreams. Like, what's going on? Like, they're doing acid and there's boobs. It just was confusing to me.
I know. Sometimes I have absorbed so much at such a young age, and I feel like my guard was so down for all sorts of things that are trash that normal people would consider to be trash. That I would held at the same regard or level as like whatever the Vincent Minnelli melodramas I was watching, whatever other thing it was.
There's not much difference between John Waters and Fellini, if you ask me. I'm just saying.
Exactly. I mean, that's totally true. They're both completely entrenched in their dreams. You know what I mean? And John Waters' dreams just involve more junk. And I don't know, but Fellini's pretty perverted.
Duh.
You're right. They have a lot in common.
I have to say that I've performed once with John Waters, and in person at that time, I was amazed at how handsome he was. He almost had a twisted Clark Gable presence, and he still has some kind of suave about him.
Oh, yeah.
And he still sends me Christmas cards. The best one was a clear Christmas bulb with a giant plastic water bug in it.
My high school graduation gift was a trip to Baltimore to see John Waters perform.
Okay.
Oh, how cool was that?
Yeah, and I have a great photo with him, and I talked to him.
Well,
he was at the last show I did with Tim in Baltimore about a year ago, also with Umar bin Hassan of The Last Poets, and John Waters had actually done something at the same club the night before and just decided to his comment was, even though I was reading letters from Eileen Wuornos, the serial killer, he said, very beatnik.
and you're very fun. Obviously, he's a very nice guy.
I've asked him so many times, what about the casting couch? He says, I don't have one. I said, well, why don't you get one for me? God damn it. What are you waiting for? Just saying.
I'm trying to think of the most screwy, probably Crumb. It is probably Crumb because you see, I rented it. There was not, I don't know. They didn't have the DVD.
Oh, you're talking about the actual documentary. You're not talking about just his work in general.
I'm watching the documentary.
Okay.
I just heard that, so it was the kind of thing. Yeah, I remember getting this movie and watching it and not really having any context for it. Just came from the video store in like a plastic. They didn't even have a cover for it. I knew the comic, so it already felt a little bit fucked up and forbidden or something. Yeah, it was like just another way to look at his work, I guess. I've seen it a zillion times since. It's one of my favorite movies.
Well, it's funny because we had a conversation a week ago, Owen, and who has that appearance, and Lydia knew is Diane Hansen, who I'd love to have as a guest on here.
Well, even more interesting to me is our podcast with Robert Williams. When you're speaking about our Crumb, I mean, Robert Williams is just one of the best. I mean, they call it lowbrow artist. And, he gave me the title Psycho Menstrum, to which I wrote a screenplay about. Trust me, it was too wacky for anybody. But Robert Williams and I became quite good friends. And the podcast is amazing. We went to his house, and that form of art now, too, is so many things that came out in the period they came out in. Can you imagine, for instance, our Crumb now? Richard Kern. Now, Richard Kern canceled himself just to get off, just before anything decided to cancel him. And
I don't know if that came out now, what people would think about it. I always think about how sort of the best people in a weird way, or some of my favorite people, are always a little bit out of step with whatever is going on. And he's certainly a case where he found this specific niche inside of the hippie culture. But he's not into the dead. He was in Haight-Ashbury and all those stuff, but it's like he can't stand that stuff. He's just into his old 78s and living in a past world.
You were talking about Kern earlier, but obviously we're talking about Crumb again. Yeah, he had to check out. He had to move out. Kern had to check out.
Cancel himself.
Kern's a little bit of a Henry Darger.
Well, yes,
gets away with it because he's a little bit in his.
Well, we were talking about Darger last week, and I had said I'd ran into your father. I was exiting the American Folk Art Museum a couple years ago. They had some new dargers up and all this stuff, and I was like, "Oh yes, I met you before. I'm friends with your son Owen and BJ." And he was very sweet, which I kind of want to talk about because it's interesting. You have two movie star parents, and a lot of times when you have superstar parents, the kids are kind of fucked up and neglected. But I have to say, and maybe you're much more fucked up than I realized. Your parents did a pretty good job.
You have no idea. What have we been talking about this whole time? We're talking about crumb and what are we,
you've had
a great job.
But you're well adjusted and you're not.
Well, because he's had a great education in film and in art, and obviously he was somehow encouraged either to be left to his own devices or his parents must be pretty damn
So
cool.
Going back, okay, so Squid and the Whale. We're gonna go back to your childhood here. Squid and the Whale. You do it. Okay, and now you're directing a film, which is very exciting. You don't have to talk too much about it because it's not out yet. The Two Against Nature. But were you implying that just doing a smaller production like Squid and the Whale kind of opened up your perspective of like taking on a movie as a director, or is that an independent point, or just that experience as an actor?
It's a hard question to answer because I think it definitely impacted a lot of things. It's also really the only thing that I've ever really put myself out there and done in that way. Because I do a lot of things, some of them for pay, some not for pay, editing jobs and whatever. I just did a comic for a friend's zine, and I hadn't drawn a comic, and I realized this entire quarantine, and that's just something that I do. And like, I think, whatever. What was the question?
I was trying to connect a thread between, okay, you're in this movie, then you're like, you know what, I'm not going to do, you probably could have had a career acting, but you're like, that's it, I did that. Then you decide you want to be behind the camera, not in front of it. But what I was trying to make a thread with is that, it's not a huge production film, this first movie you're doing, and that you had this experience with Squid and the Whale, which was not, compared to what, say, your father was in or your mother was in, it wasn't this just insane behemoth set, and you were in an apartment in Park Slope, and then now you're kind of doing found footage and you're kind of putting together a movie.
Something about that intimate process, but it's still within that. It was funny, I kind of knew I didn't want to act even then, because I the sort of payment for me, I was like, yeah, sure, I'd like to get paid, but it'd be nice to just be able to sit and kind of shadow Robert Yeoman, who's shot all the Wes Anderson movies and stuff for William Friedkin. It was just like astonishing that he was this guy shooting this coming and doing this smaller movie. And Wes Anderson produced the movie in some way, but it was just like, he was really kind, and he was very telling to my parents. It's just like, he's not an actor. He wants to be a DP. Well, I didn't really want to be a DP. I was just kind of interested in all the tools of all this stuff, because I grew up just drawing and kind of in my own world in that way in school, and just kind of like spacing it. But I didn't want to have a life in Hollywood in any way. It just seemed like the most appalling thing to me. In New York, I wanted the exact opposite of that. So it was anthology. I was so much happier just kind of shifting and keeping something small and intimate like that movie was. And I mean, that summer getting to go through all of Harry Smith's Easter egg collection and paper airplane collection. I didn't know people could have paper airplane collections. Well,
Owen, it's very interesting to me because you said the word intimate and intimacy a few times. And I think because of the nature of a lot of my work, which is so intimate, a lot of people could not deal with it in so many ways, whether it was my writing. I've also done 2 comic books, maybe 3, I can't remember.
And you had Joe Coleman on. I forgot.
Oh,
I listened to that episode, which was great.
Great artist and great human being. But also, intimacy is so important. And that is also often what's lost when the budget is bigger. It's like, I love when there's a 3-person film. I like things like Death and the Maiden. That's why I like Polanski's early films. There's something about, that's why I like performing in clubs that hold 100 people. I like being able to look everyone in the eye, because especially in this day and age with social media, intimacy is missing. Social media is not about intimacy. It's not about experience. And that's what educates the individual. And that's what's interesting about you, is you gravitated away from having 2 movie star parents into, I don't even want to call it the underground, I'm going to call it the underbelly, because intimacy is a very important thing, dealing with human emotion and reality, and then making art out of it. I mean, that's the freaking point, my friend, for me at least. It seems like for you.
that is totally, and finding Billy and Miriam, and even Jim Hound, Jim Marshall, and all these people that kind of like blow your mind with all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's the world you want to live in. You know what I mean? It's an imaginary world, but it's an exciting one. And it is kind of like what?
We're all right here, baby. Welcome to our world. Thank you for coming into it.
Thanks for coming.
Wasn't that also
thanks for coming.
$13?
But wasn't that also partially that your parents didn't want to raise you in Los Angeles? I mean, they moved.
They never lived in LA. I grew up here.
You were up there.
Yeah,
I don't know when you were born, but
I went to a very normal high school with one kind of renegade teacher, and that was, I would just always gravitated for the wildest person. Most people don't,
it's
most people don't want to deal with the people that clash with the other teachers and are difficult, but this guy was a genius, but it was always a kid would have to talk to this or that person to talk them out of having him fired,
Right.
It's so important, when I curate, for instance, spoken word shows, like I have many different generations, usually, especially of women telling stories, because I think it's so important to do that. And I also think because, my generation and maybe even Tim's, we need people of your generation that rebel against what the status quo is now, which is like a fucking Kardashian horror show, which is all about excess with no content.
And it's all bled into the art world. I mean, now the art world is sort of, if that's any kind of hip, it's horrifying. It's like, where are the freaks,
They're all on the Lydian Spin and probably on your radio show as well.
I mean, when you say that, not just the art world, pop culture is infiltrated. I mean, if you're giving the Nobel Prize to Dylan, nothing against Dylan, or to Kendrick Lamar, these guys already won. They're selling millions of records, and so then the Nobel Prize, that goes to like Einstein or Martin Luther King Jr., who's like taking risks, who's bringing society beyond and is looking ahead. I mean, to give these prizes to people that have already sold millions of records, it just seems strange. Just like I think what you're saying is like the art world, the high prize world is being hijacked by pop stars who seem to like they've already won. I don't get.
Look, I believe always in not only revolution, but rebellion. And my grand hope, I keep saying this and I mean it because I've seen it happen before as being one person that was involved in others instigating a similar thing is I think there is coming an artistic and a music revolution, a rebellion against what the status quo has become, which is absolutely pop pornification of bullshit. And all based on how much money you have and not how creative you are and not what your ideas are. And don't feed me another boring Lana fucking Del Rey or I'm going to vomit. And all I'm saying is I do believe that it's cyclical, and this is why, it is always cyclical. Now we've just been in a really big, fat, boring lull of kind of revolutionary thought or art. But and also in the overdose of the internet, it's even hard to find what might be what we want because there's just too much bullshit to squander through. That's why it's important we do stuff like this.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's tough because there's always an avenue that appears or something, but there really isn't anything like, think of what V. Vale is like a huge hero because and just everything that he's about and the books that you guys have done together, all of that stuff was very inspiring to me. And it was the same thing that kind of taught me that like there's no brow, is those incredibly strange films or
right.
all of that
also,
stuff.
And also the point, this is the point you're making without saying it. It doesn't matter when something was made. Some of my favorite writers, died 300 years ago. It doesn't matter when art was created. What matters is, to me at least, if it has an intimacy indicative of the time that it's trying to show or rebel against whatever else is going on out there. That's what makes it interesting. It doesn't matter if it was written in the 1700s or the 1970s. And, the thing is, like most great jazz music, you got to go back 30, 40 years.
It transcends. The good stuff transcends. And
sometimes things can be 300 years ahead of its time or 30 years. It doesn't matter how old somebody was, how old they are when they made it. It's just that, to me, I want a journalist and a creative journalist in any format that is a historian of the time.
We were talking earlier about like seeing something too young and maybe that scarred you. I kind of have to broach this. Your mom's nudity scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Did you see that as a young kid? And
I could tell you that. I mean, sure. I did, but it wasn't. It's just. It's not like I haven't seen. My.
You didn't see your mom. Yeah, exactly. But it was so off the palate probably of the American public by the time you were a kid. So did kids ever tease you or bring that up or anything like that?
Oh yeah, of course. But you just fire back with it's just like, yeah, I've seen your mom's tits too. Whatever, whatever it would be.
You weren't on the Asperger's spectrum where you went and he's like, oh, as a response. You actually were
to my mother's breast. Now I've never. It was not negative, but it wasn't positive.
So, all right. So there you go. That's fair. But your mom probably got the gig because your grandfather, he was a director.
Well, wait. Who was the granddad? Because for people that aren't as intimate as you and Tim, your granddad was? Who?
My granddad was a very interesting. I guess it is a triple show business thing.
Who was he? What'd he do?
He was a guy. Joe Cates.
Joe Cates,
and
director.
He cast Art Carney in the Honeymooners.
Wait.
In the Jackie Gleason show.
Owen, I think Art Carney, it's perverse. Art Carney and one of the sexiest guys alive. And his nephew, who was then
He's dead. I'm so sorry to tell you.
I know, that's all right. Well, most of my fantasy heroes are. His nephew was in Penny Dreadful,
Art Carney, one of the
which was
guys
amazing.
alive.
Well, the thing is, because of this, he didn't.
Well, he's dead. Still, wow.
Punchline.
Well, you know what? If they're not dead,
okay. You don't need to know.
They're not dead already. If they're not dead already, I basically want to kill them. Art Carney, Psycho. Who are we talking about here?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking the film Psycho.
Yeah.
Anthony Perkins also, and Jerry Lewis, but only because of his sadism. Now, that's my thing.
Jerry Lewis is like a complete obsessive fascination of mine since I was very young. Taping the telethons and calling my friend. Did you just see the thing?
Buddy Love. Need I say more?
Yeah.
Need I say more? Anyway, that's kind of my perverse tendencies. I think Art Carney was a genius. His nephew was absolutely fantastic as well, an actor. And Art Carney not given enough credit. So your grandfather, my hero now, who cast Art Carney, and
he cast Art Carney, and then as Norton in the Jackie Gleason show. That's one of the weirdest things. When I showed up to Norton, their favorite movie ever is this movie, Who Killed Teddy Bear. He directed it, and it's one of my favorite. Salminio. That's a Joe Cates film. So he made that.
Wow. All right.
So he had a very strange career in show business. He did B Pictures. He did, a movie called The Fat Spy with Phyllis Diller.
Wait. Owen. Phyllis Diller. You were really in my mind because Phyllis Diller, by the way, I keep thinking I had a life-size cloth Phyllis Diller doll as a child, but I've never seen one online. I'm convinced I had one that I would dance with. I loved Phyllis Diller since I was about 8. More solo sax concerts than any woman alive. How about the Groucho Marx show when she had black hair? First woman to insult.
My grandmother went on the Groucho Marx show. You bet your life when they were together.
Well, we know that Groucho Marx sang my theme song. Oh, Lydia, the tattooed lady. See?
Wow. Yeah, there you go.
This is the connective tissue on the Lydian spin. It's what happens when we're doing a good job. Phyllis Diller, Art Carney. Are you sure we're not cousins?
This is Drew Friedman's universe that we're talking about.
Okay, here we go.
I don't know if you.
I do know.
you know this character.
So the question. So the point is, you're saying even though your dad was already in showbiz, your mom it wasn't just like, oh, I'm passing the baton to you. She kind of independently. I don't know where you're going with that. You're saying, oh, my mom's story is kind of interesting because she wasn't.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, she kind of dipped into show business, but dipped out very quickly. She really just wanted to be a mother,
Right.
And that was always sort of the thing. And she just had the opportunity to act when she was very young, and she modeled with her sister, and they had a whole interesting life in New York too, and the downtown scene and New Warhol and all this stuff. But she was around a little bit. It's funny because I just had Justin Strauss from Milk and Cookies on the show.
Oh, what? Okay, you are weird beyond your years, but we already knew that.
but he knew her from like his Mud Club days and knew my aunt. You know what I mean? Like they just knew each other.
Who was
from
your
the
aunt?
Downtown scene, Valerie Cates. No, you know.
Never ran into her, but maybe, maybe she didn't go to the bathroom as often as I did back
But
in those days.
did you go to the Mud Club?
Yeah, I did. And played there.
I guess I always just had this imagined thing of like the no wave thing to be so separate from the new wave thing that it's.
Well, we were, and that's one of the reasons I penetrated that place. Because I'm not saying they liked me there, but I did go and
No pun
assault. I did go and assault. But let's not forget, Debbie Mazar, another one of our podcasts, used to run the door at the Mud Club. What?
Wow. Huh. Well, there you go.
Chew on that.
You have a long history of your family and shows, particularly film and acting, but you're going to be directing now.
It can't stop us. It's a problem.
You can't, exactly. Now you told me, and we're not going to talk about it too much because your movie that's coming out, we can't really say too much.
I could say a little bit.
Two Against Nature, and it's kind of interesting because the Safdie Brothers have become real hot in the last couple of years.
Can you just tell us what they've done? Because not everybody knows all these name drops.
Well, they've made all these movies for years. They went to my high school, and they actually were under this renegade teacher. He sort of created a bit of a cult. I mean, but to the point that they were 10 years older than me or something like that. You know what I mean? But I knew of them when they were at BU and making films.
What was their last film?
Their last film was this Adam Sandler Diamond District movie,
Uncut Gems.
That was
Uncut
great.
Gems.
That was
Yes.
great. That was great.
And it's extremely successful. So it's kind of exciting that you're going to be directing a movie, working with them now.
Yeah.
You can ride the wave a little bit.
Well, it's been nice to know them too and see them, develop a movie with them. But also I've seen all these incarnations of Uncut Gems over the years, and it's changed a lot as a script, but they're another link to that thing I was talking about or whatever of the intimate. I mean, I remember running sound for a little short film that they did, when I was a kid, and like getting thrown out of a restaurant. We're filming through the window of the restaurant, the two actors in there, and you just work on this stuff until the two actors sit down and you're filming through the glass until someone comes and says, "Get the fuck out of here."
So Owen, do you think that your first of all, your pedigree or your heritage, and oh God, I need to go back to grandfather, but not right now. I'm so thrilled that he was Art Carney and Phyllis Diller. They could have been my parents, I'm telling you. Only people just never laugh because they're scared of me. But do you think that having worked, as you just said, in sound at the Anthology Film Archives, also having acted, working on archives with Miriam Linna, that all of this and being around people that have been in big budget but still wanting to remain and maintain a sense of intimacy it's obviously gonna benefit you as a director. What do you think you're gonna bring? What is gonna be your thing in directing? What are you gonna bring to that?
When we were making it, suddenly I did realize that we were making a comedy, and I didn't realize that when I wrote it. I just kind of wrote a movie.
Okay, so you wrote and directed this movie that's coming out, we hope, within the next year?
Within the next year, we have a tiny pinch to shoot left, and we're waiting on, but we're finishing it up, and then it's gonna be next. We don't have a date, but it's gonna be done when I get all the pictures into the timeline and. Yeah, eventually.
So, and also you mentioned, you mentioned before too, also doing sound for people and doing editing. So, I mean, that's really important also. I mean, that just gives you such a wide, source of information about what might be done. I mean, I was telling Tim one night, it's so difficult. I mean, I've worked on some feature films that were dreadful, and I saw a lot of the pitfalls. All of the independent films I've worked on, I thought have been pretty perfect for what they were trying to go for because there were so few people involved. The more there are so many other people, and when it's a big budget, so you have to trust everybody, and they have to be all on this. It's very, very difficult.
And I was lucky to have the Safdies who only know how to make intimate movies to sort of protect that.
Certain directors, it's like the ones that know how to really capture the acting, you get the most out of the actors. Other ones who are just like brilliant cinematographers. There's other ones, they're editing, they're timing, and of course you need a piece of all of it, but some of them kind of clearly have gifts leaning towards one of those things. Maybe even sound, like George Lucas sound was a big thing. Where would you say if you can be self-critical Where would you say your skills kind of lean towards in general, your styles? Is it more acting, visual, editing, timing? What would you say?
I think it's I try to write for I think it's character, probably. I would hope. That's the thing that has most interested me, is just character and sort of like the people you see in life, and sort of and writing them and imagining whoever as that person, and then building it with that actor and talking about it and growing it. And I mean, Mike Leigh is like a complete other fascination. Like,
Absolutely.
those early Mike Leigh movies are
Abigail's
so
Party.
rough.
People have no idea because improv a lot with Mike Leigh.
Yeah.
Abigail's Party being one of the great ones.
His process is very crazy because he doesn't talk about it, but it starts with just spending time with the actors and coming up with a list of names that that you think you could be, and then you start to sort of just make these composites of different people. You know what I mean? Different people you've known in their life that just stir them in whatever way, and then it starts to grow from there into something. He's doing this separately with everybody. Then he starts networking them and in character.
Did you see this recent British comedy? I think it was called Staged, with David Tennant and Michael Sheen, and it's about COVID and them trying to develop a show for both of them, and it just of course fails because it's going through all these other processes. I really recommend it. It's pretty hilarious, but British film or even TV is so different than American, and even at the level of like a Mike Leigh, which is totally in his own world, about, as you were saying, networking characters as they develop in rehearsal.
It's interesting because, I feel like I do feel lucky to have some life experiences around the city. And, all these places that I've gotten to work over the years, even like Norton and Anthology and, even Other Music and all these places. In a way, it's like these little universes, and they're full of characters, and they're full of real pieces, and you learn how these places run, and it's always as interesting as the place itself. And I feel like in some way that's something I also really love someone like Bill Forsyth's movies, who made like Local Hero and Gregory's Girl, and they're these other small, strange, but then they're comedies, and they're very funny, but they're also just very human and very much about the people. They're not comedies that you could just sit and write and say, oh, I'm going to write a comedy. It's like you have people in mind, and you're building it for, it's a vehicle and a vessel in a weird way for everyone that you're involving in it. You're building an atmosphere.
I've got to throw out one of my all-time favorite films, and again, it's 4 people mostly, and then maybe 2 others toward the end. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
I love that movie. And I'm reading the Mike Nichols biography right now.
That must be great. I mean, and it's amazing that Mike Nichols. I mean, I think that film, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, they wanted Betty Davis. Can you imagine Betty Davis quoting Betty Davis in the one scene where she's like, Elizabeth Taylor is like chewing on a chicken leg and going, what a dump. What is that? So annoying, so wonderful. That is just one of the most perfect films ever. I love that they shot it in black and white, even though there was color film. They went against everything. That's top of my list.
That movie, to me, in a strange way, he was able to, I feel like he sort of employed some kind of like Kazan kind of techniques in that movie. It's sort of like
another one of my favorites. Absolutely.
It's like Baby Doll, where Baby Doll actually just starts insane. I don't know what I'm talking about, but
Streetcar Named Desire,
even East of Eden, and just how it unravels. It's not just craziness, but it's like this controlled, intensity. It's like this combustible psychodrama, and then the angles start getting a little crazier, and it eases you into it in a way. It's like Taxi Driver, where just suddenly you're like, all right, wait, I was following this guy up to a certain point, and then
it's going weird.
Wait, but here you at a certain point, for wherever the person that interacts with it turns, and it's not going to be the same place for everybody for that movie.
Well, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Edward Albee, who wrote the play. I mean, he actually flipped Broadway on its side, because before that it was all male-dominated characters, and actually he started writing about his crazy mother a lot of plays, and it actually changed the dynamic of what was being presented on stage. And again, the basic point, which I love about Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, is so many relationships to a lesser degree have a similar psychosis, which means this: if they get into arguments that are always the same, there's a cycle. I call it a 1-second nuclear warning. You know this is coming. How can you stop it? You can't, because once you're in this psychodynamic, which can define the worst parts of any relationship, you know it's coming. Here it comes. Oh shit, we're in it. And then the reparation is so long, and it really highlights that, but in a most extravagant and elaborate way. I think a lot of relationships have a mini version of that. I always say, look, if you know this argument is coming, it's the same one you have all the time. Turn around, pull your pants down, and sing Dennis Leary's "I'm an Asshole." It'll quell the situation immediately.
Oh, and I want to touch on this whole thing. Like, okay, you have distance from this movie you're making, and then you're like, oh, I didn't realize at first it's a comedy. Will the audience realize? Like for instance, when I see the original Bad Lieutenant, I'm like, well, this is a dark comedy. I mean, it's so brutal, and the trajectory just gets worse and worse. And just when you think it's going to get better, it gets worse. Or the first half of Full Metal Jacket. I mean, maybe I'm a sicko. When I watch that, I'm just like in tears almost. It's just so vicious. It's just absurd. So I don't know your movie, but like, is it something that's just like, maybe it's a comedy, maybe it's not? And why do you see it in this light at this point?
Yeah, I guess it's about a young cartoonist. I mean, that's what I can say about it. And I guess I just didn't realize that it's a comedy and that everything in it is everything. There's a lot of fucked up stuff that happens in it. And it's although all those things are both funny.
Tragic comedy.
I feel I tried to write everything so that there's no jokes in the film, but I tried to write everything where it's just like, it has to come from the person, and that it's just that kind of it's a behavioral comedy.
And if the right actor can portray a variety and the depth of the human experience, then some shit is going to be funny and some shit is not.
Yeah, I think that's you put it well. But yeah, I mean, it is now that I am more interested in, and you know, I knew comedians growing up, and I was interested in comedy. I did the SNL pack. I tried to be a writer for a long time, and it just, you know, it's tough. It's really tough. You know, the only thing that I've ever really been able to ingratiate myself is sort of just freelance editing and this and stuff. And I've done documentary stuff and all the ads, everything. But
writing for other people is really difficult, especially if it's for TV, because they don't know what they want till they have it. That just sounds to me the most ridiculous, horrible thing. Horrible.
You never know what you have until you get it, though. That's the thing that you don't, you know, it's sort of and that's the interesting. But anyway,
the other night at Tim's house, which I hate a laugh track. So of course, Weasel Walter decided a laugh track or an almost entire conversation. And we were just talking about the nature of why laugh tracks were added, which are so annoying in anything. And especially, I'm going to give one example. I went and saw Fargo in the movie theater. I was so annoyed. Everybody's laughing. I'm the only one laughing at the wood chipper scene. I'm like, you know what? I can't go in. I don't like the collective laugh, and I can't stand laugh tracks.
Well, like usually I'm the loudest guy in the room, so I'm coming into this room, and I'm just like, I couldn't imagine Weasel Walter with you three, with you two.
Well, excuse me. You know there are three words I've said to Tim Dahl the most in our relationship. Volume and duct tape, meaning I'm gonna get out, or sometimes I just get out the duct tape again.
There we go.
The later, by the way, excuse me, the later it gets at night, Owen, the quieter I get. So I start to whisper. That kind of scares people.
Did you know, Owen, that when the TV show MASH was showed in England, there was zero laugh track, the exact same episodes? I mean, talk about a completely different interpretation of that. Frankly, not very good show in my opinion. But with MASH, and Weasel and I have been joking for a while, re-editing that show, crappy show.
So that Weasel is Hawkeye.
No. You jumped.
I want to cut him right into what is it?
We want to re-edit Friends and take out all the laugh track. So really,
well, that's it's like have you seen that Garfield without Garfield, and it's just
I know nothing about
Arbuckle.
it. Oh God.
Amazing.
I'm still so stuck on Grandpa with Art Carney and Phyllis Diller. I'm just in awe.
Oh, but even beyond that, you know, he was Johnny Cash's television producer. He basically saved the variety show, and he was the other JC.
Nice.
The first music I ever heard, Johnny Cash.
Is your grandfather? I don't even know. Is your grandfather still alive?
He is all dead, very dead.
All right.
Half and
He's
half.
all dead. Okay, all right. Well,
He is
Undead,
no.
undead.
but did you meet him?
Yeah, I knew him really well. I mean, he was a fascinating guy to me when I was younger. He died when I was like 7.
Right.
He passed on the genes to you. That's how it usually works. Every other generation.
Yeah,
so.
I do. I love the old showbiz. I do love old showbiz.
Yes.
And he got me into magic and stuff. He produced Copperfield. He made the
No
Empire
way.
State Building disappear, and all
Oh,
that.
wow.
He also produced the $64,000 question.
So he's very versatile. Wow. I mean, those are
And it was
quite a wide
when
spectrum.
he told me when I was a kid about the $64,000 question, just because you see it on repeats or whatever, or in boring documentaries about the history of television, where the thing trickles down and it's like a million cards. It has a machine that shuffles these cards, and he told me, yeah, it's all the same thing printed on these cards. It's meant to be like these thousands of questions.
Oh,
and then it
right.
gets It's all the same question on the cards. Yeah. I mean, he's just someone that still I just think about every day because he's just
that's
such
amazing.
a fascinating.
I'm telling you that
He produced the circus for television, and he was just like, it's not going to be the 3-ring circus; it's a 1-ring circus. No one needs 3 things going on a tiny set. Everything gets smaller. He's like one of these guys.
That's so funny.
Early television titan.
he gave you the best of what he knew, and can't wait to see what that produces, Owen.
Oh, thank you.
Tie it up, Timmy.
Yes, this has been a fun afternoon hanging with Lydia Lunch and Owen Kline. And
been a blast.
Yes, and I think we'll be hanging. Well, things are going to be opening up soon, so that means we will be able to hang in the physical as opposed to the digital. But that's for us, not for the whole audience. But you've been listening to the Lydian Spin featuring Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and our guest Owen Kline.
He never ends the show, but I'll let him this time.